What's up, everybody? Welcome to System Crafters. I'm David Wilson, and today we're going to talk about how to enhance your emails using org mode. So this is another entry into our series about doing your email with Emacs. And in the previous videos, we've been talking about how to use the mu4e package to basically sync and view and respond to any emails that you get. In this episode, we're going to talk about how you can use org mode to compose emails with HTML formatting, because mu4e, or at least in Emacs in general, when you send emails, they're going to be sent in plain text. But these days, everybody has modern email clients that know how to render HTML, and most emails are sent using HTML formatting, so that you get things like bolded text, or maybe different font sizes, or maybe inline images inside of emails. So we're going to try to replicate the same kind of behavior in Emacs using a package called org-mime. So the thing to know here is that org mode is great for email too. I mean, obviously we've been talking about org mode a lot in the Emacs from Scratch series, and also about how to use org mode for configuring Emacs and your whole computer using org-babel. But in this case, we're going to show how org mode can be great for composing emails. And specifically, we're talking about HTML formatted email messages. And the reason why this is possible is because org mode already has built-in functionality for exporting HTML from org mode files, using all the formatting syntax for like bolding or italicizing text, or maybe inserting links or inserting images. All this markup that org mode already has built in can be exported to HTML today using the export functionality. And we'll talk about that in another video. But for the purpose of today, what we're going to do is talk about how you can use that export functionality to create HTML formatted emails and send them using Emacs built-in mail functionality. I also do want to say that you do not need mu4e for this behavior that we're going to talk about today. It's a separate package entirely called org-mime that we're going to use, and it doesn't really depend on mu4e or any other specific Emacs mail client. So like I was saying, you can attach images inline to emails. You can also send the contents of your existing org files. So let's say, for instance, you want to share a part of an org file, like maybe a configuration file or maybe some document you're working on. If you want to share it with someone else, you can easily send that document as an email, as a HTML formatted email, or even a subset of that document. So it's kind of interesting if you think about how you could basically share parts of documents in that way. And also, you can write emails in org files to send later. There's a way to do this so that you can capture the recipient of the email, subject line of the email, etc., and then just write the whole thing in an org file, and then later you can use the org-mime package to send that. So let's just jump right into it. So what we're going to do is install the org-mime package. Now, this is very simple because all we really have to do is just install org-mime. So the use package syntax is going to be simple for this. In fact, I think I left out a part which is going to give me trouble now because the formatting here. But when we copy it over, I'll fix it. So we're going to jump back over to the VM that I've been using so far. This is an Ubuntu 2004 VM with a more traditional setup, so that we can see how it looks in a normal sort of computing setup. And I'm going to go below this mu4e configuration that we've been working on so far. If you don't know about this configuration, just check the previous videos in the Emacs mail series, and then you'll see that. And I'm going to add org-mime here, and I'm also going to use ensure t to make sure that we install that package from Melpa whenever we run this. So now I'm going to use Control-X, Control-E at the end of this line, and that's going to go out to Melpa and grab that package and then install it. And I'm not sure exactly why it's complaining about these messages, probably because it's an older version of Emacs, but this should be working anywhere from Emacs 24 up to 27, so you shouldn't have any trouble with that. So once you have that installed, now you can use the org-mime HTMLize function to convert any email that you're writing, the body of any email you're writing, into HTML using org mode. So you can put in formatted text, you can put in headings and subheadings, you can put in links, code blocks, which is kind of interesting. and then images inline that get attached correctly automatically, and then anything else that org mode can convert to HTML. So what we're going to do is grab this little simple snippet of org that I prepared here, and let me make sure that I have this image on this machine. I may not actually have it. Oops, I'm on the wrong screen here. Let's see. I'm looking for an image that was the Emacs logo, but I do believe it's not on this machine. But I could probably grab another one that would work for this. So I could probably grab this path. So let's try that. So I'm gonna start composing a new message, and I'm gonna use mu4e compose new for this. But I believe you can also just use plain message. Let's see. Compose mail. Yeah, you could use plain compose mail for this also. But I'm gonna use mu4e compose new because it's what we've been using so far. mu4e compose new, if I can type it correctly. I'm going to use my personal context for this, and I'm going to send this mail to my Gmail account, my test Gmail account, so that we can see what it looks like whenever it gets sent. So let's see, test HTML mail. And I'm going to paste all of this that I put in before, and I'm going to move it over a little bit so that it's a valid org document. And let me fix this little line here. So there was a begin source or an end source line that I left the hash mark off of, mainly because I didn't want to break my original document. So I just have to add that back here. Also, I need to change this path to be the path to the image that I want to send. So I'm gonna say pictures, and then if I go back to this dired buffer, I can grab the name of this file and then put that in here too. Let's say, let's enjoy this huge screenshot in this case. So now, I think I just saved this buffer by accident. Maybe it'll still send. Let's see. So basically what I've done here is I've created an email body in org mode formatting. It doesn't really look great because we're not getting the actual org mode syntax or the org mode formatting when you have an org mode buffer, but we'll figure out a way to do that in a moment. Basically, you're just typing in raw org mode formatted text here, and then that's going to get converted into HTML. So I've got a heading here, I've got a link here, I've got a code block showing some Emacs Lisp just to see whether we can see, the right font used basically for the code block. I've got an inline image here, and the difference between an inline image compared to a link is that you only have one set of square brackets. So there's 2 square brackets on the front and 2 on the back, but on a normal link, what you're gonna have is 2 square brackets on the front, and then a close and open bracket in the middle between where the link and the link text is, and then the closing brackets at the end there. So this is how you would basically insert an image to be added to the mail body. So I'm going to use Control-C and see if this will send. And it will ask me for my my password to open my keychain, which is what we expect. So let's type that in. And now it should send that email using my Fastmail account. And if I go over to my mail, I should see that mail show up now. Oh, and the thing that I forgot, which I told you before, is basically you need to run that org-mime HTMLize command. So I forgot to do that. Let's do that one more time. I'm just going to copy all this text and do that over again because I don't want to have to redo what I just did. All right, we'll copy this. We'll go back and we're going to start up the mu4e compose new again. Send from personal. Send to systemcrafterstest@gmail. Another test. And then we're going to paste this in. And this time I'm going to run the right command. So I'm going to use meta X, Alt X, and then I'm going to run org-mime HTMLize. And what this is going to do is automatically create 2 sections in this email. The first section is a plain text block with the original text that we used. And this is so that an editor that does not support HTML mail can still show the original text. Now, this is not necessarily going to be very useful to someone who doesn't know how to read org syntax or doesn't know how to deal with that. But at least it gives them the opportunity to read the more raw text whenever they receive this email if they can't see HTML. Then there's a second section here that has the actual HTML output when exporting your body, your mail body. And we can see that it basically has all the different divs and P blocks and everything else that you would expect to see in formatted HTML. So I'm going to use Control-C to send this. It should remember my password this time and send it for me. We can see that it's taking a little bit longer to send this email because it's grabbing that image that I'm attaching and putting it into the email as an attachment. Now I'll go back to my email and see if that came through correctly. And now we have a new email. And we see that we actually have formatted headings of different sizes. So the first heading we had here, we also have the link to org-mime that shows up correctly as a link. We also have a heading saying, here's some Emacs Lisp. And this actually does have a code block, basically. It uses a different font, a monospace font, so that the code shows up correctly. And then the screenshot that I attached to the email shows up in line in the message. And then at the very end, we have a bolded line saying very cool. So this actually did work as we expected it to. We had to run that one command so that it exported the email correctly before we send it. So let's see, anything else here? Nope. So, all right, so that wasn't a very nice way to actually compose the email, though, because you have to write org syntax manually. It's much better to be able to write org mode syntax using the normal org mode and use the key bindings and the fontification, or at least the highlighting of the org text the way that you expect it to be in a normal org buffer. So there is a way to do that. There is a command called org-mime edit mail in org mode, which is a bit of a mouthful, but that will pop open a separate buffer that will allow you to edit the contents of the message using normal org mode so that you don't have to write it all yourself. So let's give that a shot real quick. I'm going to run me4e compose new again. And then this time I'm going to go, well, let's fill out these parts first. System crafters Gmail, easier. Now I'm going to use the org-mime edit. Yeah, org-mime edit mail in org mode. When I run that, what it does is it basically makes a sub buffer in a sense where it copies what's already here, but then it gives you this this buffer where you can write normal org mode stuff. So if I were to go and start adding headings, like using Alt-Enter, first heading, I can use Alt-Enter, second heading, I can use Control-C, Control-L to insert a link. So https gnu.org/software/Emacs, use Emacs. So I can insert a link as normal, basically everything that you would normally do whenever you're editing an org mode file. And when you're finally done editing this document, what you can do is press Control-C, Control-C, and it will automatically, well, in this case, it didn't seem to. So what it does is it basically takes that org content and puts it directly in your message, but it doesn't seem that it does you the favor of automatically converting it to email whenever you complete that. It basically just puts the org text contents directly into the email. So if you want it to convert to HTML at this point, you do have to run org-mime HTMLize yourself to then convert it to HTML before you send the mail. So keep that in mind. Anytime that you use this org-mime edit, whatever the command was, let's see, what was that? Org-mime edit mail in org mode. When you use that command, you're going to have to run org-mime HTMLize again afterwards, after you finish editing that, to make sure that it gets converted to HTML before you send your mail. So if I use Control-C, Control-C here, it's going to send the mail again. Then we can jump back to my Gmail and make sure that it got sent with the correct formatting. And now we can see that we have our two headings here and the Emacs link. Cool. So what else? Let's talk about sending in an existing org buffer, or maybe a subtree of a buffer as an email. There are a couple commands you can use for that. So let's jump back into the email, and we'll take a look at org-mime org buffer HTMLize and org-mime org subtree HTMLize. You gotta love how these command names just start getting longer and longer the more concepts you put into them. So let's try opening up our normal emacs.org file here. Let's just send the contents of our emacs.org file as an email, just for fun. So I'm going to use that org-mime buffer, yeah, org-mime org buffer HTMLize, and it's going to create an email buffer for this. No, I do not want to evaluate this buffer. Okay. So now what this did is it opened a new window here at the bottom, basically where it has the HTMLized version of this entire buffer. You can see all this HTML code here, basically. And it put us into a plain composition buffer. This is not the MU4E composition buffer. This is the normal compose mail buffer inside of Emacs. If you want to turn it into the MU4E buffer, you can do that. Let me show you what's happens first though. So we're in the plain buffer. If you start trying to complete an email address, it won't do it because this is something that's only, or at least for our current configuration, it's only available through MU4E. So if I turn on MU4E compose mode on this buffer, then it converts it to an MU4E composition buffer, and then I can send it to systemcrafters at systemcrafterstest@gmail.com. So it automatically populated the subject using the title of the document apparently, and it's got the whole body here. So I can just go ahead and press Control-C, Control-C to send this mail. But now it's telling me that mail dir is not found, which is kind of interesting. Probably it didn't set the context correctly whenever I did that. But let's check and make sure that I actually did send the email correctly after all. Yeah, okay, so it did get sent, but I think there's some configuration that doesn't get applied properly in that case. But as you can see, the entire document of my configuration did get sent, and it looks pretty good actually. I mean, it's not bad for an email. This is pretty acceptable. So all the links that I had in my document and all the headings and all the formatted code, even the inline formatted code bits, they're all being shown in the right fonts. And yeah, basically everything is there. Even, I think I saw some special characters here. Yeah, even the special characters I have in my org bullets configuration. So that's pretty nice. It looks pretty good. I think that's, you know, quite better than many emails you might be seeing written by someone in a normal email client. So that's kind of cool. So we can also send from a subtree. So if I were to go back to emacs.org, and let's just go to our MU4E configuration, I will just send from the subtree. So org-mime sub, okay, so org-mime org subtree HTMLize. This is the command I'm gonna run here. So I'm gonna press enter, and it's gonna pull up just a simple buffer only with that subtree from the org document. So if there are any sub elements under this this node, those would also get included with the email. So this is a good way to just give like a piece of a document and not the entire thing. So I can do the same thing here. You need to turn on the MU4E compose mode. I should probably also try to set the context because I think that's what was happening wrong before. So MU4E context, switch it to personal. Let's see if that actually fixes the issue here. So now I'm gonna send it to systemcrafters Gmail and press Control-C, Control-C. Still has the same problem. I think this is a little bit unfortunate, but it does end up sending the email. But what I think the consequence of this is that it's not going to put the sent mail in the right sent mail folder at this point. So keep that in mind. The configuration might not be set up in a way that will work correctly for you. Now here, it seems that whenever it sent this subtree of the document, it doesn't give you that heading that the subtree starts at. It just puts that as the subject of the mail, and then everything else is just the body of what was there before. So another thing to keep in mind whenever using that particular part of the functionality. So one last thing that's kind of interesting about using this for sending the subtree of an org document is you can write an email message as a subtree in a document and then use org properties to set the recipients and subject line of the email message. So you don't have to use the composition view at all. You can just write a mail using plain org mode document and then set all of these things inside of properties. So if I were to go and just copy this whole block here and put it into my configuration file, into emacs.org, I'm just gonna drop this at the very end and make sure that it's formatted correctly. All right. Make sure all the properties are gonna work. Okay, so now basically I have a mail subject set to, I wrote this in org mode, mail to systemcrafters.test@gmail.com. I'm gonna delete these two because these aren't valid addresses, but this is the way that you can set the CC and BCC lines for other recipients. So if I were to save this file and then use org-mime org subtree HTMLize again, I believe that's the right one. Let me double check that in my notes. Yep. So if I use that subtree HTMLize, then it's going to create another mail buffer, and it's going to have the recipient pre-populated, it's going to have the subject pre-populated, and also the body pre-populated as well as converted into HTML. So I can press Control-C, Control-C here, and it's going to send that via mail. And then if we go look at my inbox again, we'll see that I received this email. I wrote this in org mode. So that is another way that you can deal with sending emails. Now, if anybody comes across the issue of the MU4E settings not being applied correctly inside of this composition buffer, definitely leave a note in the comments if you figure out a way to solve that so that other people will have a solution to that too, because I literally just ran into this. I didn't see this before until just now. So that's sort of how it goes whenever you're preparing these videos. All right, so one thing you can do that's kind of interesting is you can customize the HTML export style. So this is something that is already a part of org-mode's HTML export functionality. You can set basically CSS customization for the HTML output, but org-mime allows you to customize it just for the purpose of setting it for your mail messages. What you can do is set the org-mime export options. Now, one thing you may have noticed before in the first mails that we sent is that it had section numbers on each of the headings, which I find to be a little bit strange and not really that useful for sending emails. So we can turn that off by setting this section numbers keyword to nil. And I've never honestly seen it add the author or table of contents information automatically, but the recommendation in the org-mime documentation was to set these to nil. So we're just going to do that too. Now, what this does is basically overlays these settings onto your existing org export settings for HTML. So if you've already configured them for maybe like exporting a blog or exporting articles or something like that, you may need to do some extra customization here to override things that you did for your other export options. So just keep in mind that this is going to go on top of your existing configuration for anything for exporting. So we can copy this over to our configuration. And I'm going to put it in the config block of this use package. We're going to paste it in here. And then, let's see. Yeah, that's not going to work. So I'm going to just bump it over just a little bit. I was trying to use a key binding to organize that, but it didn't work at the moment. And also, another thing you can do is to customize the CSS styling of any individual element in the email. So let's say we wanted all of our code blocks to have a dark background and light text instead of the opposite, where right now it has a white background and black text. So you can use the org-mime HTML hook, which is basically a hook that gets invoked whenever HTML is being exported for the email, so that you can basically catch any particular type of tag, which in this case, we're catching the pre-tag, which is what you use to wrap source code to make it have monospace font. And then you can set any CSS styling you want on that. So in this case, it's formatting a string, which sets the foreground color to a kind of a creamy white color, and then the background color to a dark gray, and then also putting some padding so that the block has some space before it has the text inside of it. So we can also copy this over. And this is basically just registering a Lambda function that responds to this hook. So let's drop this in after this set Q. Move it over just a little bit. Sorry to those of you who know how to do the indentation correctly. I know it's probably annoying seeing me using my spacebar to do this, but all right. So now we've got the whole thing here. I'm gonna evaluate this with Control-X, Control-E, the entire expression, and now that configuration should be applied. So what we're gonna do is write another email really quickly with MU4E compose new, and I'm gonna send it from my personal account. We're gonna send it to systemcrafterstest@gmail.com. Here's some code, and we're gonna put it inside of some headings. So let's say well, actually, let's use the other thing we saw before, the org-mime edit mail in org mode. So let's do this because it's easier. So first heading, and then we're gonna have a subheading. Here's some code, and then we'll have an Emacs list block. We're just gonna define a function, and then it just doesn't do anything interesting. All right, so now we've got a simple message that will show whether the settings we set for the section numbering and also the output of the code block gets styled correctly. So remember, we have to run the org-mime HTMLIs after finishing that file so that it gets fontified correctly. Now I'm gonna use Control-C, Control-C to send this. And now if we jump back over to my Gmail, we should see that we have a new email that's formatted correctly. So now we have our two headings that do not have section numbers anymore, and our code block now does have a black background and white text. So This is just a way to show that you have full customization over the output of what you see here. Even all of these headings, you could change the font, you could change the color, you could change the size of each heading individually by targeting the H1, H2, H3 tags. And even paragraph blocks, you could change the font. You can do anything you want, basically. So you can make your output mails look as nice as you want in any way. So I think that's a pretty nice functionality to have. All right, so let's see what is next. Okay, so it is a little bit annoying to have to automatically run org-mime HTMLIs, or to manually run org-mime HTMLIs on every email that you send to make sure it gets formatted in HTML correctly. There's two ways to deal with this. One is that you can set the message send hook to just run org-mime HTMLIs every single time that you compose an email. The downside of this is that if you sometimes want to send plain text emails, like say for instance, if you participate in mailing lists where they predominantly use plain text, like a lot of the GNU mailing lists, you don't want your mails to automatically get converted to HTML. So a way to make sure that you intend to send a mail as HTML before you send it every time is to use a different function for the message send hook called org-mime confirm when no multipart. What this does is checks your email that you're about to send to verify whether you have turned on or you have converted it to HTML or not, so that you have a chance to go back and do it if you intended to. So let me add that to our config and let's test it out real quick. I haven't actually tried this, so if it crashes and burns, I apologize. But let's give it a shot. Let's also check the docs for this function. I'm gonna use Control-HF to get describe function, and we're gonna look this up. So basically it says prompts whether to send email if the buffer is not HTMLized. So very simple. I'll use Control-X, Control-E to evaluate that, to add the hook, and then let's write an email really quickly. So I'll use ME4 compose new, send an email to myself again. Does it work? And I'm gonna write just test string, and I'll use Control-C, Control-C. All right, so it tells me in the echo area, it seems org-mime HTMLize is not called. Send it anyway. So it will give you the chance to say, yes, I want to send it, or no, actually, I do want to run that function instead. So in this case, I can just say org-mime HTMLize and then have that run it so that it gets converted and then send it. So I think it's better than always converting to HTML if you often talk to people over plain text also. However, if you only ever want to send HTML emails, it's very easy to just set that hook to call org-mail HTMLize every time, and then everything will work just as you expect it to. Okay, so that was all for this particular episode. So next time what we're going to do is talk about another way you can use org mode with your email process, which is how to manage your email processing workflow using capture templates. So we're going to be able to while we're looking at emails, create org capture or have an org capture template that will be able to allow us to create a to-do item, to go and check on an email, and maybe keep track of emails that we need to process or reply to, etc. So that'll be a nice short video that will cover that topic, and probably we'll do that next week. So hopefully this was helpful for you today, and let me know in the comments if you run into any trouble with this, and I'll be happy to try to answer those questions. So last but not least, I would like to thank my sponsors. So thank you to all of you who have decided to sponsor the channel and the work that I do on all of these Emacs videos. I really appreciate it. If you are interested in becoming a sponsor, please check out the two links in the description below. I'm on both GitHub sponsors and Patreon. There's also a link to do one-time donations via PayPal as well. And yeah, so to those of you who have become sponsors recently, I apologize. I have not been updating the screen as often as I should. I'm trying to come up with a way to automate generating the screen so I don't have to do it by hand every time, because it's kind of a pain to do it in OBS every single time I need to update it. So I'm going to try to get this done so that it will always be up to date. So just keep an eye out for that. All right, so thanks a lot for checking out this episode. Make sure to subscribe and click the bell icon so that you get notified for the next one that goes out. And until then, happy hacking. Thanks a lot.